For your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 376 of This Old Marketing for Friday, May 19th, 2023. And, well, you know, with me as always, my pal, my colleague, and the guy who has never reached his debt ceiling, Mr. Joe Polizzi. Yes.
Not for a long...
It's all about the debt.
I did.
Days,
there was a time. There was a time. I told that story the other day to somebody who asked me, did you know that Content Marketing Institute was going to be so successful? I said, no, it's freaking out.
Right.
Because I had all these bills and I had no money at all. And all I had was subscribers. And I had no products. It was terrible. But yes. But I hear that the debt ceiling thing is coming to an end. Like it's going to be.
This is what I've heard as well. Yes.
Thank God we have Bitcoin.
I have no idea the kind of deal it's going to get. Yeah, thank God we have Bitcoin.
We need non-sovereign monetary policy, and anyways, whatever.
But do we? But
yes.
But do we really?
Yes, I think we do. Because we played this record before.
Okay,
it happens every time.
Yes,
they fight. It's like, oh, we can't increase, we can't spend. You have to lower spending, whatever. And then they get down to it. They say, okay, you get this, I'll get this. We're gonna increase it another $3 trillion, and we're gonna be right back here in 18 months doing the same thing, maybe less.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
We're $32 trillion in debt or something like that. So, which is fine if we're growing. I mean, it's not fine. It's sustainable if we're growing. And you can pay off the billions of dollars in interest on an ongoing basis. But this is not a financial show. I should probably stop talking.
Right. Certainly not one that the at the economist level that we would need to be to sort out $32 trillion worth of debt.
No, I mean, so
other than
marketing,
the fact that we fight over
marketing and media person related, that seems like a lot of money. That's
it does seem like
a lot of zeros.
Yeah. You know, a trillion here and a trillion there. Pretty soon we're talking about real dough. Yeah.
How much is $1 trillion if you stacked it in $100 bills? How high would it go?
I'm going to guess to the moon.
Would it go to the moon?
Something like that.
It would
maybe
go...
not that high. Yeah, maybe not that high.
I don't know. It'd be taller than my house.
It would go high.
It'd be taller than your house.
Yes, that's for sure.
It's a lot of dollars.
You would be Scrooge McDuck, like bathing in it. You could jump back and forth in it and swim in it like Scrooge McDuck.
Something like that. So anyways, how was your week? Did you do anything fun?
My week was lovely. I was catching up from my last week being out of town and doing all the things that I was doing at my retreat. So it's been a lot of catch up on email, catch up on some deliverables, catch up on what went on at my house while I was gone, all those things. So, but I feel I'm lovely and caught up.
Are you refreshed? Let me ask you this. You go on this.
Yes.
I know you skipped a couple because of COVID, but you do this every year. Do you come back with an idea?
Yeah.
What changes? Robert Rose goes back into the house in his posh development and walks in the door. What is different? Is the hair flow different? Is it what happens?
The hair flow.
What's the behavior change? Is there one?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that. Yes, there is. Okay. There actually is one. One, I would say and this is going to seem a little esoteric, but not, well, you understand this maybe better than anyone, which is the head clearing aspect of it, right? Just literally taking a week and not thinking about the daily grind is a very head clearing exercise, and you're forced to do it, right? You don't, there's, other than the tiny amounts of email and obviously recording last week's show, I didn't think about my business, and I didn't think about I had no meetings to attend, and just that aspect alone of it was quite head clearing. So there's that benefit. The second is I do actually come back, because it's not that I don't work on myself or I don't work on my business while I'm out there, but I restrict myself to big things that either scare me or that I've been thinking about, and I use that time to really deepen my relationship with those ideas to see if they're worth pursuing or not. So a great example of that is what I'm coming back to, as we add more AI-oriented consulting to my little business. Well, how do I do that, right? Because everybody and their dog is offering AI consulting these days. I mean, you can't throw a rock and not hit somebody who's going to tell you exactly how to become an AI.
And even the dogs can do
expert.
it now. I mean, so
that's correct.
That's
exactly.
Another issue.
Even the dogs can now push buttons on ChatGPT just like the humans can. So the question I had for myself was how to build a business in a world filled with that much noise. And I came to some conclusions. I built a little framework. I sketched it out in my notepad. I sat there on the river and sort of thought some things out. I ran it by a couple of people and really came back refreshed with an idea of how I can actually do that. So there are some tangible ideas like that I come back with, and a couple of others that are probably not worth sharing at this point, but you'll start to see them as as the year progresses. But that's yes, things do come back. They call it, interestingly enough, we've come at the mastermind. We all call it re-entry, which is basically going back to the world and how you re-enter your sort of day-to-day grind. And there is a thing to it. There's like Saturday and Sunday were weird for me because I was getting back into the flow, and I didn't really want to look at my email, but I did, and it was a bit of a there's a transition there, like you said, a hair flow, as it were, that is really worth paying attention to as you come back from something like that and you start getting into your flow again.
It's sort of like what Bill Gates talks about is Think Week, right? He goes into the cabin somewhere and takes all these books with him, hardcover books, and that's all he does. He just reads and thinks, decompresses. And I think regarding the email, I've never done this, so I think I would freak out a little bit, but that's my own problem. But I know a lot of people that have taken little sabbaticals for a weekend or for a week. They have their out of office on, and it says, "I will not see this email because when I come back, I'm deleting everything." So you're going to have to send me another email.
I've seen that as well.
What do you feel? You feel that's a little bit too... Come on.
Well, I think it's unfair. Yeah, no, I think it's unfair. And if I were in another kind of business, I could consider that. But given the business that I'm in, which is consulting people, that's an unfair burden to put on my either potential customer or existing customer. Like, that's just not... I don't think that's right. So I do monitor my email. I don't necessarily answer them till I'm back, and I might send a quick note. Like, the interesting thing is I've almost never set up an autoresponder. I don't think in my 10 years of having my own consultancy, I think the times that I've sent up an autoresponder to email, I could count on two fingers. I just don't do that because I typically feel like it's my job, part of my job and my experience to monitor that. And even if I manually go back to someone and say, got it, received, I'm on vacation or I'm on my trip and, expect an answer for this in 2 days, I'm setting a contextual, sort of expectation there. And so that's, to me, saying basically, I'm not going to see this and I'm going to delete everything when I get back is just basically saying your message didn't matter that much to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. But it's still, it's a thing. The best time for me, and I didn't say that I was never going to respond, but it was you remember, because it was January of 2018, and I did electronics-free January. I did no social. I wasn't on any computer device, iPad, iPhone for all of January, and I said, I will not see this message at all until February. So, now, coming back and spending the 2 weeks plus that it took me to delete everything or whatever, but But it's not so bad once you get through the first week because everybody realizes it and they just stop emailing you. Because you generally get emails from the same,
that's
same
right.
kind of people. So
that's exactly.
But I want to do that again.
It's all that spam that builds up.
I want to do that. Well, I want to do that for two reasons. One, I just want to do that because I think emotionally and spiritually, it's a good thing to do to sort of reset yourself to that. And the second thing is,
absolutely,
you know that I set the goal that, on turning 50, I want to make sure that I write another novel before I'm 51. And for me to do that, I have to create the space in my schedule to do that.
Yep.
So it has to be 5 days.
Yep.
I need 5 days a week. I have to set up some kind, just like marathon training. You have to, I can't just do, Monday I'm going to write here and maybe a Thursday or whatever. I have to set a schedule and I have to create some kind of a rhythm. And if I don't get into that rhythm,
it's a meeting you set with yourself.
Yeah, I have to do that. So I actually was talking to my wife about that today. I'm like, can I get a 3-week period or something in July, part of August maybe, where I'm not doing podcast interviews and I don't have to do anything besides, P&R or Content Inc. Can I just? So you should be happy though. I did mention that I was going to keep doing the podcast. I thought about it. Maybe taking a break.
Oh, but that's supposed to make me happy. Is that what the assumption is?
We should.
That makes me happy.
Seriously. I mean, we have wonderful listeners. They know. They've been through this whole thing. If we decided to take, let's just say, August off, would it affect anything?
Yeah, stop right there. Because, yes, of course. I just had a conversation today with one of our wonderful listeners who was listening to our last episode, didn't know it was our last episode, in the gym, whatever that now 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and was listening to and said, and literally had an emotional moment in the gym because heard it was our last episode, stopped the podcast, and then went home and listened to the last episode at home, which, it's a little over the top, but considering it's us, but at the same time, don't even make those threats idly, my friend.
No. I'm not. It was funny.
We're not going anywhere.
We did. As you know, you were one of the wonderful donors. We had our 100 holes of golf marathon. It was this Monday or last Monday, and it was great. We raised $47,000, and it's our biggest fundraiser. And we had 28 people out there golfing 100 holes and perfect weather, and everything was great. One of the people that goes to that event is one of our devout listeners, and I won't call him out, but we had a really great conversation, and he said it's very hard for him to find anyone that's really covering media marketing the way that we cover it. Now, I think that was a compliment, but is there really?
I love that.
I don't know if anybody really covers the cross section of media marketing and digital content the way we do. So I guess that's a good thing. But he says he's looked all over the place and tried to find other podcasts and started and stopped and just couldn't find one that covers the industry like we do. So I was like, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We will not stop the podcast again. So.
Yeah. There you go. Well, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should shift into actually doing our job here and actually get to our show. What do you think?
If we must. Well, like we talked about before, but we're already talking to each other. It might as well be a podcast. So it might as well be a podcast. All right. We've got a great show. We've got a really fun show. And of course, because it's like every other week, it's time to make some donuts and talk about AI. And we will talk about AI and the current content copyright that's going on with not only the Hollywood writers' strike, but also Sam Altman from OpenAI testifying in Congress. We also have new technology that may solve or actually make complications to the copyright on AI-generated content. Then we'll talk about podcasting ad revenue, which is a strange topic for us because, by the way, if any of you are interested in advertising, we are open for business. And podcasting ad revenue, how it's beginning to outpace the total digital market. And then we'll talk about Google and if their new announcement that came from their developers conference last week about turning the online publishing industry upside down with their new AI-oriented chat, sort of GPT-like search results will really cause a lot of trouble. And then if we've got time, guess what? Forbes has been acquired
I don't know. This is the 9th or 10th or 400th time it's been acquired.
I think they have
Forbes was
acquired.
A
calendar reminder set up every 6 months.
They do. Time to go. It's a recurring calendar item.
Yes.
Yeah. Time to sell again. Anyway, then we'll get into our regular Q&A. We've got a wonderful question from listener Robert Riggs, who we'll talk about a little later. And then we'll get to our rants and raves, where I have a commentary on a new announcement from Dotdash Meredith, the big publisher, on their intent-based ad targeting tool. And Joe, he's going to talk about, here's the tease, a Daily Dracula. So love that. Love that. Yeah. There you go. That was.
By the way, everybody should know we're recording this in the afternoon, and whenever you and I record in the afternoon, it is a totally different experience.
We get punchy. That is true. It gets punchy.
Last episode, you're like, "Are you still awake?"
Okay.
Like, what's going on? But this one, I'm watching it. All right, what do you got? Let's start.
Let's start with the courtesy of Deadline here. The headline is OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says content owners need to get significant upside benefit from new technology. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman told lawmakers, as he testified at Congress, that the right thing to do, as he said, is make sure that content owners get significant upside benefit from artificial intelligence technology that has raised new concerns over copyright and compensation. At the Senate subcommittee hearing on Tuesday, Altman was questioned by some lawmakers over the use of copyrighted material to train OpenAI's ChatGPT to generate new works. The use of AI is an issue with the Writers Guild of America, and which is now striking against the studios currently here in Hollywood. And content creators in general have raised concerns over what the technology means for protection of their intellectual property. The article there goes on to talk about how some of the senators use their time and, reclaiming their time. They always seem to be reclaiming their time. As they reclaim their time to talk about all the things that are wrong, I'm going to put on my best Katharine Hepburn voice.
I got it.
I declare. It's so hard. And anyway, we'll link this with a couple of paired news stories here. One from newscientist.com that really explains, or at least attempts to explain, why the use of AI is a major sticking point in the ongoing writers, the WGA, the Writers Guild of America strike here in Hollywood. And they're talking about why they think they may get replaced, or how content may be used to replace all the wonderful, talented things that they do. And finally, what we'll link to, and we'll have a little discussion about this, is a article from inma.org, which is basically talking about how a new technology here may actually help with, at least with music. It says current copyright battle over generative AI in music is a good test for media. And that article talks a little bit about how this new technology is called Content ID, and it's about a powerful display of technology, as the article says, turning around something that should have been dragged young new YouTube straight into court, and instead turn it into a money-making machine for a creative industry. Basically, the technology, which we can explain a little bit if we get that far, really gets into the idea of how the technology could start to help content creators identify where they have been used as part of an AI engine to, duplicate their songs, duplicate their voice, and all those kinds of things. So what do you make of all this stuff? I mean, it's been the week of seemingly to be about AI, content, copyright, ownership, all that stuff. What do you think?
Surprisingly, Robert, I have a couple takes. I'm going to give you the first one.
I thought you might.
But so I wanted to run this by you. So I read the article on Sam Altman, and it seems, and I was like, what are the reviews? Like, what's everybody think of Sam's performance in front of Congress? It seems to be everyone loves Sam. And Congress fell in love with Sam because Sam gets out there and says, Congress, we need you to regulate this. Like, we absolutely need your help. And so Congress is like, yes, look, he's coming to us for help. And I read a couple of these articles. This is what I thought of. See if you follow along. I thought of the movie Clear and Present Danger. You remember this movie with Harrison Ford? You know what I'm talking about?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So you know the scene.
Don't stand there and yell at me, bark at me like a junkyard dog.
So you remember
anyway, sorry, when
the president, there's the drug lord that gets in trouble, and it's going to be all over the news. And this drug lord or whatever the guy is, he had association with the president.
Is he a friend of yours? Yeah.
So he had association with the president. And the president's advisor said, we want to distance ourselves as much as possible. You had nothing to do with it. You didn't know him very well. And Harrison Ford comes in, his character, says, no. You were friends. No, you were the best of friends. And said, go toward it. So it's a non-issue. This is what Sam's done so well. He's come in and he's just like, no, I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help you. And he's setting this up so that he can do all his horrible little things in the back. But they're thinking he's a friend. Now, I don't know Sam Altman. I've heard great things about him, whatever. But whoever is advising him is amazing because he got 5-star reviews all across because he said he wants to be an enabler of peace in the next generation of the future, War of the Worlds that we're going to see here. Do you follow me here?
Yeah.
Am I making sense? Am I totally off base?
100%. I absolutely 100% agree. And as I read this story and have been following it a bit, I think you're exactly on point. I think that's we have, I don't know how many countless stories we've talked about here where tech executives go up on Capitol Hill and the story coming out of it is either how stupid and uninformed the Congress critters are when it comes to technology, or how combative it was because they're trying to justify their position on something. How many times Zuckerberg has gone up there? How many times,
exactly.
And so what Sam Altman did that was so brilliant, but so simple and so why haven't everybody done this, is he walked in and said, yeah, it's a problem. Go for it. I'm here to help. What are you going to do? And he basically has said, you need to get smart on this. And I'm not here to, I'm here to help you be smarter on this. But really what we're saying is you need to take action. We're not here to fight it. We're not here to combat you. We're not here to disagree with you. The industry definitely needs to be regulated. So what are you going to do about it? Which basically takes away all of the... It didn't stop them, by the way. There was many of them that sort of felt the compelled need to sort of reclaim their time and give a speech. But what it really did was suck all the air out of the room for them to basically make a stump speech about how this is awful and it's going to do this thing and they need to do this, that, whatever it is, right? Because he just basically said, the time for that is not now. We just need to do something, right? And I think it's brilliant. It's a brilliant PR strategy. It's a brilliant content strategy, to be honest. And I think he's earnest about it. I think he's truly earnest about it. His that he is really, because I've heard him talk before about, that they've made a lot of mistakes and that the discussions, the reason that they have gone as far as they have, with people saying, oh, you went too far too fast, and his position on that as well, we went this far so that it would actually trigger the discussion, so that it wouldn't feel like we're trying to softball or sandbag anything, with regard to the technology and where we actually are with it. So it's sort of like open it up, see what it's there. By the way, make a lot of money doing it, and then basically say, okay, the world is now opened up. What are we going to do about it? So, yeah, I think it goes to, and why it's so relatable to the two other stories, because what the writers, the WGA, are really, really, really concerned about is that AI and ChatGPT type solutions are not going to replace them in writing, but they're going to replace them in generating story ideas, and how they want to create they want to have the union ability for basically to have some sort of what they're asking for is some sort of safeguards and guardrails on that from the production companies, which of course is a ridiculous request at its face, because just like we've talked about so many times before, you don't know where the idea comes from, and the idea could come from you, it could come from ChatGPT, and unless you report it, nobody's going to know the wiser. But it's also, I think, a little unfounded. I think it's just an unfounded fear. However, what I think the writers are right about is that the discussion needs to happen. We need to have the discussion because it will ultimately get to a point where you have that. So as a discussion point, it's great. I don't think, from what I've read of the actual submissions by the writers, the WGA, and the demands that they're asking for, that's kind of all they're asking for, is that there's a discussion about it. This, by the way, the AI thing is very newsworthy, but it's the lowest on the on the items that they care about, right? There are so many other things that the writers care about right now in terms of pay, in terms of representation in the room.
It wasn't initially a thing.
How long they get paid.
They threw it.
It was not.
This happened along the way as they were striking.
This gets news. Yeah. This gets news, right? This gets covered. And so, whereas, specifying the number of writers that have to be paid in a room on a particular show and the timelines of the actual workflow and all the details that they really care about, that doesn't get covered in the news. What gets covered is the idea that they want to replace them with robots. So all these things together, I think, are just great elements of a discussion that is good that it's happening. It's all good that it's happening.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, it's going to get more and more complicated. Shoot, I've been watching some of the Ed Sheeran stuff where he's been accused of lifting all these songs, and he comes back and he's fine every time. He doesn't, they find no fault at all. It's funny. He's like,
sure.
The guy, I saw the one part where the person asked him, it's like, how did you write that in 30 minutes? It's like, it couldn't have happened. He's like, you're telling me I've been a musician for my whole life and I couldn't come up with a song in 30 minutes from all that work? So could you do something, and could you take a case and successfully defend it from all the knowledge you've had in your 20 years? And so it just goes back and forth, and it's crazy. The one thing I wanted to talk with you about, which I think is interesting, is for online content creation. Would it be possible? I mean, my vision of what this could be is if you created an article, like the articles we're looking at are new articles from these particular branded sites. If they have some, I don't know if it's on the blockchain or whatever, but it's sort of your packet, and this is your creator token that you'd have, that if it goes into a generative AI solution, and for whatever reason AI pings that as part of the source, could ultimately you get paid on that as a royalty. Like, so if it goes out and you have one search that happens and it's like, oh, okay, it goes out, whatever, and it hits 1,000 different sources for that, and it creates something new. If you tagged it in a proper way, could you get royalties ultimately? And I'm talking years from now. But that's where I think we're going for digital content. Do you think that's a thing?
Well, I don't know. I think what is interesting in that discussion, this gets to some of the licensing / identification that I've read a little bit about on how they're trying to determine what is deep faked or copied via AI versus created original. And as I understand it, one of the most interesting things about that, the way the work that's being done in that space, is what they're not trying to do is develop ways to detect fake content. Like, in other words, to detect deep fakes, or to detect AI generated content, because ultimately that's an arms race, right? The technology gets better for the AI to create original. Then you create something that can detect AI generated content, and so on and so forth. And by the way, it's weird. I'm starting to notice a pattern, just generally speaking, and maybe this is confirmation bias on my part, but when I see ChatGPT come back with stuff, I can now kind of tell. I can, it's like you can just sort of tell when it's, I don't know what it is, but maybe that's
I can tell in my LinkedIn comments.
Confirmation bias there.
I get 2 or 3.
Totally.
So I had one up the other day. We were talking about the return of print, and there were a couple on there. What I'm reading, I'm like, that sounds like a ChatGPT response. I almost can guarantee it.
That's right.
It's going on. People are doing that. Here's the post. Here's the post from Joe. How should I respond in a thoughtful manner? Boom.
Right.
There you go.
That's right. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about that later when we get to Google. But the interesting thing to me is what they're trying to do instead of the security thing is how do you certify human created content? And we talked about a little bit about this on the show a few weeks ago, where what they're going to do is develop technology, or thinking about developing technology, where there is something embedded in the original, like that's visible to the human eye, that shows you, this is certified human. Like the person creating this certified this as a human created function. And if you don't see that, that's when you know that it could be faked, or it could be something that is sort of like a digital certificate that says this was created by a human. So if you don't see that, you can't be sure.
Yeah, so
it may have been created by a human, or it may not.
So you're going to have like Muggle content out there and pure blood content, is what you're saying. Right?
Yeah, I'm not
it's something like that. It's like, here's the human content certification, here's the human/robot content, and here's the pure robot content, and that's how the Terminator happens. Serious.
Okay. You went from Harry Potter to Terminator like really fast there. Like it's just okay.
I really do think these things are going. I mean, I don't want to be negative about it, and I don't know if it's a negative or a positive thing, but I do think there's going to be hey, we don't want anything on the site. It's all human created. We don't use any AI tools. And then you're going to have a whole nother site that's all AI created, and you're going to have then most of everything in between is going to be kind of a mash between the two. In the next,
I think
24
you're
months.
not going to. Yeah, agreed. I just think it's going to be even messier than that. I think you're just going to get to a point where good content is good content, and you're not going to care, right? It's just going to get to a point where, you've got good content and you've got not good content, and really, if it's great content and it comes from a trusted source, it doesn't matter. It's all good.
Well, that's
and
yeah. I had
a
conversation with with an artist recently about this, and we were art is art, and if it evokes some kind of emotional feel, does the person that's engaging in that piece of art care? Maybe they do.
They do. I think here's what they care about. They care. So I had this question in my Facebook feed as well, which is if a piece of art creates the same feeling of emotion or creates the same level of engagement, does it matter whether it was AI created or created by an artist? And my answer to that is no, but you have to then assume that no value is infused by the creator itself. In other words, you have to assume that that part of the value and the resonance that someone has with a piece of art has nothing to do with the artist, which I don't believe, by the way. I believe, in other words, if Stephen King writes a book and a novel and it comes out that much of it was written by AI, I don't care. If it was a good book, I don't care that it was written by AI, because Stephen King used that tool in order to give me a Stephen King piece of work. If I see that a great artist that I love and that I resonate with that creates art has used AI to create a piece of art, is that okay? Or a piece of music? As long as because for me, the artist infuses into the work. If you show me two pieces of art and I evoke, if I have the same evoke of emotion, and you tell me one was created by a human, one was created by AI, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't have a tie to the artist in that particular point. And so I probably won't resonate nearly as much with that until I see the rest of that artist's work. So if you then show me a bunch of stuff that was created by the AI and a bunch of stuff that was created by a human, chances are I'm going to resonate more with the human, because there's a story there, there's ideas there,
yeah.
There are emotions there that artist has. They infuse themselves into the work, and that, I think, is the differentiator.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago. That's the difference, because having this, whatever you want to call it, brand, the content brand, the relationship you have with your audience, that's the differentiator, because the content itself is going to be the same. In the next, it could be weeks, Somebody can say, "Hey, I want this whole thing written in the style of Robert Rose or Joe Pulizzi." They will make it happen and will be exactly like what we would do. And I had a conversation today with somebody and said they're pro AI and they're showing me all the tools and I'm amazed by the content that's coming out. It's like this, that, and whatever. But you got to throw in the human touch because you always got to add that human feel, and so you got to edit it and go with it and do your whole thing. That's today. That's only right now, because tomorrow you won't have to do that because it's going to do it itself. So what's the differentiation? The differentiation is right now. Like, when I mean now, we have an opportunity where we might not have it in 6 months to build these brands, to build these connections as human creators. Because you could build that,
yeah.
And maybe I'm talking. I don't know what I'm talking about, because there could be. We've already seen Instagram accounts and TikTok accounts that are all robotic. Anyways, they're already AI, and there people have relationships with those, and it gets you to the Joaquin Phoenix Her movie, where that comes in, throwing all kinds of movies.
Well, and yeah, I know. So one of the things, going back to what we talked about at my retreat, one of the things that we talked about AI was sort of two things that provide attention to that exact idea. So one end of that spectrum is we're already starting to see healthcare companies play around with ChatGPT and training models to provide for companionship to people who are lonely and or seniors who are on their own and want to have a chat with someone. That's providing, and it's very early days on that, but there's some really interesting things that are going on from a value creation there, which are really interesting. The second thing, which I think is the other end of that spectrum, if you will, is I think one of the things, and this comes directly with Sam Altman going to Congress, et cetera, I think we have gone from 0 to 80 in the development of this very quickly. Literally 6 months, we've come to 80 miles per hour on this thing. I think going from 80 to 81 to 82 miles per hour is going to take a lot longer. So I think we've seen the immediate evolution of language models get to a point that they are today, and you can argue that they're really strong. You can argue that they're magical. You can argue that they're kind of meh. But I think the next level step up is going to take a long time. So I think we're we're on base at the moment, but I think getting home on this kind of stuff is going to slow considerably over the next 24 to 36 months.
I disagree. I think
Excellent.
we're in for the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to be in for some kind of inflection point, and I don't know what that means. And I don't know if it's going to be good or bad.
Well, you think basically what you're saying is AGI or sort of what they call general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. That's what the scholars are all afraid of, right? Where AI basically tells you based on the goal you set for it that no, I'm not going to approach it that way. I'm going to approach it this way. That's the sort of thing that everybody's afraid of. And so you think AGI is coming very quickly, and I would disagree with that. Well, I would think AGI is not coming for some time.
I'm talking specifically about,
not that it's not coming, but it's coming.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about content creation. I think that the test's there. I'm not talking about like what do they call it? What's the book that talks about where AI knows that it's a living thing? We're not that far in the.
Oh, you mean the Turing? You mean the Turing test? Yeah, the Turing test.
All I'm talking about is that this whole thing where I've got to put my human touch on this AI content. That's a temporary thing, where this thing in the next few months is just going to roll over us, and we're going to say, "What happened? Wow, you've got to put your arms around it right now." And we should be a little bit concerned. I would be concerned about everybody's content business if we're not thinking hard about this and we've got some kind of a strategy.
Well,
for it.
Being concerned and being afraid are two different.
Not afraid.
Yeah,
but concerned, for sure.
Yeah. Well, of course, we should be concerned about a lot of things,
but also big opportunity for those that are thinking about it.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, who knows? What do I know? Oh, I know movie references.
Yeah, what do you know?
I know movie
what
references.
What do you know?
And I can golf 100 holes in one day.
The fact that you tied Harry Potter to the Terminator is a really disturbing.
For some reason, every time somebody talks about like pure human versus AI generated partial, and the
you think like the
I always
Muggles,
think about
the
Harry
Muggles
Potter.
4000 or something.
I always think about Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I do. I think about is it Muggle content? Is it pure blood? Like I don't know what's what, but that's what I think about. So, anyways,
that's
my loss.
You do you, my friend.
All right. All
right, let's move on to another story here. Let's get out of the AI world for a moment here, and we'll get to a story that comes courtesy of Marketing Dive. The IAB, which of course is the Interactive Advertising Bureau, and PwC have said, dun, 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 podcasting ad revenue growth outpaces the total digital market. Podcasting ad revenue in the U.S. grew 26% year over year in 2022 to reach $1.8 billion, according to a new report from the IAB and PwC. That rate of growth far outpaces the total digital ad market, which was up 11% year over year. The IAB said the increased macroeconomic pressures have not stymied momentum for podcasts, and the trade group upheld a sunny outlook for future growth. The report project podcasting revenue will more than double by 2025, reaching nearly $4 billion. For the first time since 2018, news programming is no longer the top revenue-generating content. Maybe we should change up our format here, my friend. The channel is now led by sports, society, and culture and comedy programming, pointing to its appeal to a diverse array of consumer interests. Well, arguably, we fit all of that, right? We're sports.
We're all in.
On occasion, we're society, we're culture, we're definitely comedy, or at least we attempt comedy.
No, I don't know.
I think. What do you think about all this?
Well, hey, I talked to my sister the other day, who's a musician, and she was like, "What's next for you?" And I said, I think that Robert and I are going to do Marketing the Musical. We've talked about it. I think that there's an opportunity.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, I think that's a thing.
Yes, we even wrote. You and I wrote a couple of.
Yeah. It's like, don't get Zuckerberg. I don't know what it was. Anyways, we've talked about this for a long time. I think that podcasting has been severely underfunded for years and years, and now the difference is that you have buyers that now understand how influential podcast hosts are, and that actually changes or maintains behavior significantly.
That's right.
Because of the intimate nature of audio. And so it's just, this has nothing to do with, and nothing's changed except for the fact that buyers are now aware that, oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't know it was so influential. I didn't know that. I mean, you and I knew the first year we started a podcast, and where everybody was saying, oh, we love the book, Robert. We love the book, Joe. And we love your newsletter. It's great. And then once we started the podcast, 99% was, oh, my God, love the podcast. Completely changed.
Yeah.
And still been that way. It's still always, I would say 75% of the comments are about the podcast. So, for good or bad.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it speaks to the consistency of doing a show that is, for many people, and I mean this in the nicest way possible for us, is background noise. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's very hard to, it's impossible really to do a blog post or written content as background noise. You just can't do it. You have to divert your full attention. But I know so many of our listeners, and I personally, the way I listen to podcasts is I'm on a walk, I'm on a drive, I'm traveling, I'm focused on other things, and it's a great companion, right? It's a great companion to, tune in, tune out, tune in, tune out, and you've got somebody, it's a companion really more than anything else. And I think that's really the strength of the format. And as we start to see, and we didn't do a show note on this, but we totally could have, with the new National Broadcasters Association had their show where they started talking about cars and the changes to what's happening in car radios, where podcasting and audio formats are starting to change even in radio now, where it's mostly digital and mostly digital shows, where the the line blurs very quickly with podcasting. And so I think the future looks very, very bright for audio programming that's digitally delivered. And whether you call that a podcast or just a show or, whatever it is, I think, I think you've got a lot of room to run here.
And there's two things. You were talking about multitasking. It is the only form of media where you can multitask. That's it. Hands down. It's a winner every time.
Yeah.
The second thing is the profitability aspect of it. Generally, you're leveraging other sources, email lists, maybe other shows that you have, and you can launch a podcast relatively inexpensively today. More than doing, I want to do a YouTube channel, or I want to do an e-newsletter launch. I mean, there's lots of different, what's it cost for us to do this podcast? It's our time. It's basically our time, and plus really $20 cheap. A month.
Really, really
folks.
Cheap.
So
that's right.
Yeah. So, anyways, you put any kind of ads on top of that, you're like, wow, this is an 80% margin. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, anyone does want, we already have, StreamYard is a great sponsor of our wonderful show, but we are looking for other sponsors. So, yes, if you'd like to, we would like this article that we're talking about to come true for everyone who has a podcast, incling us.
Yeah, that's right. That is correct.
Is that begging?
That is absolutely correct.
That wasn't too bad.
I think I'm not above it. I'm not above begging. I can be bought very cheaply. It's all.
Yeah,
good.
We're running a summer special.
Should we cover this
summer special?
You
get.
There you go. I didn't even know.
Yeah, if you sponsor, we'll throw in a bucket of chicken. How about that?
I like that. We should actually do that. We should actually do that.
I'm totally serious. Whoever sponsors this podcast during the months of June, July, and August, we're gonna send you a bucket of chicken as thanks.
I'm 100% behind that promotion. I am down for that. I want to see the banner ad for that.
Yeah. By the way, a little side note on this. Did you know that Dave Thomas, who founded Wendy's, started a Kentucky Fried Chicken? Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
I know you know that.
Know that.
I bet you 30% of our audience did not know that.
I'll bet you more than 60% of our audience didn't know that.
Okay. Well, let us know. Let us know. We need more.
Are we doing this?
We need more questions. Yeah. So there you go.
Are we going to do this story about the about Google and the search results?
No, we should. I think we do this. I'm sorry. Do the story. We need to get the story out there. This is very important. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good story, and I do actually have a take on it. So this basically, we have Google. This comes to us courtesy of Forbes, that just was sold for the 9th time. This is the editor's pick story, apparently, and Google is about to turn the online publishing industry upside down, says the story. Google announced a number of new features at its annual developer conference in Mountain View, California on Wednesday, including new writing tools in Gmail, immersive directions in Google Maps, but there was one announcement that didn't get a lot of attention outside of tech circles, but it's arguably the most radical change the internet has seen since Google became the biggest search engine in the early 2000s. No hyperbole there, of course. Google demonstrated on Wednesday how it plans to use generative AI in search engine results, a feature that hasn't been rolled out yet to the general public. Basically, they used a demonstration where they went, what's better for a family with kids under 3, Bryce Canyon National Park or Arches National Park? So this demo, they do a search and basically says, okay, what's better for us, this national park with a dog and 3 kids or this national park with a dog and 3 kids? And the search results come back, and it's, I guess, kind of impressive. It comes back with a long sort of maybe a couple hundred words of comparisons between the 2 national parks. And there's so many media outlets reporting this as like, oh, it's the end of publishing. Oh my God, it's there's an art. We won't link to it in the show notes because it's ridiculous. But one of the articles from Slate called it deadly. This was going to be a deadly idea. Yeah, they've really used the word deadly in it. So anyway,
deadly
this
to
whole
who?
thing is about them.
Deadly to publishers.
Publishers, apparently publishers, but it was in the headline, so it was like a little, not a little, but basically clickbaity. Anyway, the idea is that this search results would come back and it would basically answer questions. And as the quote from the VP of Search said in the demonstration, now Google will do the heavy lifting for you. So I definitely have a take on this, and actually did a little research on that for an article that I wrote for CMI, but I'd love to get your take, and then I'll tell you what I think.
I think that your take is probably way more accurate than mine, but I've been thinking for a while. I think that as more especially goes to voice search, and I'm asking Siri or I'm asking Alexa or whatever the case is, I'm not good. They're never going to give you results. They're just going to tell you it's going to be a generative AI response, and it's going to take everything that's out there and it's going to give you, here's what it is. For whatever reason, Google's not doing that right now. We're going to head that direction. I think we've got a little bit longer on this one, but I think that this is probably the way it's going to be. I'm going to type in. I'm not going to see a scrolling list of 10, 20, 30 results. It's going to give me, based on everything that's out there, here's your answer. One answer, and you probably ultimately won't see where that's coming from. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But do you agree?
Well,
no.
I do agree to a point. I mean, I think one of the things that I think is really important is, so look, it's easy to maybe throw Google under a bus here a little bit, but I don't mean to do that. But I actually took the time, as I'm doing now with all of these demonstrations of generative AI, I actually took the time to read the response, right? To read the search result that Google came back with. And I'm going to assume for a moment that they actually, A, did a search result, and B, didn't manipulate the results. So that both of which may not be true. But taking them at their word that this is the search result that comes back, there's problems with it immediately. It's very impressive on first reading. You go, oh, that's interesting. But then if you read it again, you can actually start to see, and this gets back to what we talked about earlier in the show, sort of the classic, very classic generative AI response, which is very logical, very well-structured, sentence structure, good spelling, all of that. Lots and lots of adjectives. ChatGPT loves its adjectives. But then very little value. Like the article that it came back with doesn't answer the question, and B, doesn't really provide a distinction between the two national parks. Basically, it says neither park is good for dogs because they ban dogs pretty much from all trails. But then they go, well, Bryce, though, has some paved trails that you can take your dogs on. Well, I go look. Both the policies, literally, they sort of maybe even talk to each other about their policy because their policy is exactly the same. Dogs are not allowed anywhere except on the paved roads. It's just that Bryce Canyon actually has some of their trails bleed into some of the paved roads, so the trail is the same name as the paved road. So technically, you can bring your dog on the paved road that's part of a trail at Bryce but I'm sure that's true at Arches as well. And so the same thing, you go read basically they bounce back and forth with saying, well, one is good for this, some say some are good for that, but this good, it doesn't actually ever make a recommendation. It just goes, well, they're kind of both great. And so I know I'm quibbling with a demonstration of the thing, but that's kind of the point here, is to quibble with this, because really, the answer is not a problem with Google, but it's in the content that's actually getting created. And this gets to what you just talked about, which is how do we respond to that? How do we start responding to a world where that kind of search exists? And so if you go to the parks, you go look at their website, it's classic, right? They've got all the rules about why dogs aren't allowed at the park. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. Neither of them took any sort of initiative to create a paragraph or an entire page about, here's all the wonderful things you can do with a dog. And so it's going to change, I think, the way that we look at our owned media properties and really start to look at what we aren't creating. What are the things that aren't there that we should be thinking about, that we need to be able to create to help us create distinction when people start getting answers from ChatGPT or AI-based search that it will use as its learning model. In other words, we need to be better teachers. we're going to have to be better teachers. And all that really is how do we be as most useful as we possibly can as marketing and creators? That's the only thing we can do. It's the only thing we can do. How are we more useful, right, and how do we teach better?
You're actually really, I mean, if you haven't answered the basic questions on your own website for Google and ChatGPT to pull from, you've got a problem, right? You should be doing that. Any question.
That's right.
I mean, it comes back to, there's a lot of people say, hey, they ask you answer for Marcus Sheridan. No. We moved beyond that. But in some cases, we haven't.
Yes.
You have to go ahead and do that. The other thing is, and I know we're way over on this time, but once it ties in personal preference and we allow it to say, here's my preferences, whether that's Apple or Google, wherever you give the power to say, here's what I do all the time. You can track me, and I want you to come back with the answer that you know me. And that's where the power is going to be, because it doesn't have to go through all the generalities. They already know that you don't like this on the path and that not on the path. They know everything already about you. That's where it's going to be really powerful, and that's close, I think.
Yeah. So I think it's further away, but yes, I do think that you're exactly. All right, quickly, we have a wonderful question that we want to get to from one of our wonderful listeners. His name is Robert Riggs, a great first name, of course. And let's listen to what Robert had to ask of us.
Hello, this is Robert Riggs. I'm a former broadcast TV journalist, now the creator of the True Crime Reporter podcast, and we spin off episodes into streaming television documentaries. And I can tell you the topic of discussion among independents like me at CEX this year and last year, by the way, great conference, is discovery. How do you get discovered to build audience? Independents, we don't have a chance against the big budgets of Amazon, who will dump $50,000 a month into promoting a new podcast. Love to hear your suggestions, and I can tell you that this is also a problem for the big streaming networks. There's so much out there, so much clutter, so much noise. How do you get discovered? Thanks. Keep doing a great job.
Okay. Awesome question. First of all, Robert, amazing radio voice.
Oh, my goodness.
Goodness gracious, I wish I had a voice like that.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you have a take on his question about promotion? Like, how do people get discovered? Like, how does someone like this get? We talked a little bit about this on our show about the 5 things that we love to do about building an audience, but specifically, what do you have anything to offer, Robert, on discovery?
I think for the media and the streaming side, you are a little bit more knowledgeable than I am, but maybe you have a different take. I think where a lot of people, no matter what you're building, whether it's the streaming networks or you're a personal creator, we don't think about the fact that 75% of what we do should not be content creation. It needs to be about promotion and distribution. We need to think about that. So basically, most of what we're doing as content creators is marketing. And I think that's where content creators get into a hole, because they start creating content and they don't think about that. So before you create any specific piece of content, you should have a marketing plan for how you're going to distribute that, the partnerships that are going to align with that. I think there's too many creators that haven't thought about that. So what do you think?
Great point. Yeah, it's a great point. Well, it's that what lines up with is, the reason I stopped being a writer and a musician here in Los Angeles. Because what I discovered was being a writer, a screenwriter, or a musician in Los Angeles, it's not about the writing or the playing of the music. That's what you get to do. The job of being a writer or the job of being a musician in LA or Hollywood or wherever you are is marketing and sales. And at the time, I was like, I'm the last person I want to market. I don't want to market myself. I don't want to sell myself, but that's the job. The fact that you actually get to play music sometimes and write sometimes is just, it's part of the reward, quite frankly. But having said that, on the discovery side, my specific advice, I guess, is 1, find a platform. We've talked about this before, right? Finding a platform or platforms, right? So, for example, when I started, it was basically, around using my company and the fact that they would send me around and speak at conferences. That was my platform. When I then shifted out on my own, I found Content Marketing Institute and you. You became my platform. And finding that platform that there's already an audience who will then start to aggregate around what you do just puts you at a more frequent at-bat, as it were, for being discovered. Then find your temporary at-bats, right? Find, talk, work with, go write for, go be a guest on podcasts, go leave a message on some chuckleheaded, couples podcast and promote yourself. See what I did there? Get your content out on somebody else's platform so that people start to have more at-bats to find you and get discovered. And then the sort of idea is start to associate yourself with those places. Like, go find out your where the audiences that matter, go find out where they are. One of the things that I did when I was creating content for when I was CMO of a small software company is, yes, my team was focused on new customer acquisition, but I was focused on analysts and finding out where analysts went and where the influencers were and people that would talk about us in a way where I could get their audience's attention and be discovered. It's all about how many at-bats can you get in terms of getting to the audiences and people who can discover you and do something. And I'll just mention this as an example. This week, Pat McAfee, you know who Pat McAfee is, right? Do you watch his show or listen to his show at all?
Tell me.
Pat McAfee is a former punter for the Indianapolis Colts. Okay. And he quit the Colts. He resigned after 8 seasons. He joins up with Barstool Sports. This is pre-acquisition of Barstool Sports. And he was a podcaster. He basically just contributed and added some stuff, and he found a platform. And then that got him enough juice that he said, hey, I'm going to start my own thing. And he started his own sort of YouTube show, and he started his own podcast and all of that. And he got a radio show out of that. And so he found another platform in the radio show with Westwood One that he was now podcasting for. And so now he's got this podcast and his show, and now he starts bringing in sort of his temporary influencers. So he got palsy with AJ Hawk, who, of course, is palsy with Aaron Rodgers. So they were frequent guests on his show. That, of course, gets them their audience. He builds into a little bit of a rep about pulling in some, high-profile guests to his show. Then he gets, quote-unquote, discovered by FanDuel, who offers him a $120 million deal with FanDuel. He literally this week has walked away from that $120 million deal with FanDuel to go do a deal with ESPN. So he's going to have his own ESPN show.
That's amazing.
And by the way, I think that's a huge mistake, but there you go, right? It's that idea of finding your at-bats to get discovered by the people that you are. So it's your audience for sure, but it's also the audiences that matter. That might be people in your industry. It might be the acquisitions. It might be somebody at Netflix. It might, whoever it is you're trying to ultimately be acquired by or be discovered by. So, if you're Lana Turner and you're at the drugstore and you're going to get discovered by Hollywood, you got to go to the drugstore a lot.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The other thing is audio for audio, newsletter for newsletter, blog for blog. I mean,
yes,
exactly. Robert's got a great podcast, so I'm sure Robert's thinking, okay, well, I want more
great
people
podcast
to listen to my serial killer show that I've got in fiction, or fiction, nonfiction, whatever the case is. I'm going to go on other serial killer shows, or I'm going to do deals and swaps and all those types of things. Like, we want to promote we've had some really good success with the Tilt newsletter recently because we're promoting on other newsletters where there's other creators. It's not rocket science. Right. We're just going to where the buyers already are and do the deals.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I'll offer one sort of orthogonal thought to that, which is also going where your competitors aren't. Yes, go do all the shows that are related to crime and all of that, but also go to the shows where they're not, right? Where you stand out, where your audiences or your potential audiences are. But, so one of the things that I used to do when I was a CMO is, yes, we would go to all the marketing shows. Yes, we would go to all the technical content shows. Yes, we would go to all the MarTech shows, but we would also go to the industry show for medicine, or we would go to, because they're the same buyers are there, but they're talking about different things, and we would stand out in that crowd, and we would get much more business out of those things sometimes.
That's a good thought. Yeah, I would say that's a secondary.
Yep.
That's your second. Once you've done the first one,
totally
do the second
secondary.
one. Yeah, very good.
Exactly.
Very good.
Exactly.
Very good.
All right. Thank you for the question, Robert. We really appreciate it. And now, very quickly, more questions. Please do send those questions. And it brings up, yes, of course, our wonderful site, thisoldmarketing.site, where you can leave those wonderful voicemails with the dulcet tones of your voice. You can't compete with Robert Riggs. Let's just be honest. He's got an amazing voice, but we want to hear yours, hear your voice, hear what you have to say, hear your questions, hear your thoughts, all those things. Go to the site, see the show notes, see everything we've got, the other 375 episodes of this nonsense. And that gets us to, of course, our wonderful Rants and Raves section, where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave. And we have, well, 2 raves today, I think, which is
oh my gosh,
rare.
it's a record. It's a record.
I know. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Talk about Daily Dracula?
I'm talking about Dracula. This is from The Information, and I love this story. So this is about a gentleman named Matt Kirkland. He had a side project. Basically, he took Bram Stoker's Dracula, serialized it in his Substack newsletter called Dracula Dailies. He has 262,000 people signed up for this. So Kirkland's a full-time web designer in Kansas. They say he reread a copy of Dracula during the pandemic, and he came up with the idea of republishing the novel split into 110 parts in his newsletter, and basically does this through like May to September time period or whatever every year. This is his 3rd year doing it. And May to November, did the whole thing. So started with 40,000 subscribers after the first year. Now it's up to 200,000, whatever. And this makes perfect sense. It's such a great content marketing initiative because Kirkland's going to come out with a book around the topic of Dracula. So he's got 260,000 people interested in this whole thing, is getting Dracula Daily for free. Of course, it's public domain, so there's no copyright issues going on. Has the book coming out, got the deal with Simon & Schuster because he's got the audience, and this is just fantastic. And now there's a bunch of knockoffs doing it for other novels. I think there's some Dickens ones out there that are starting to happen. But it's just an interesting thought, Robert, right? It's like, hey, I don't have the content, but I'm doing this thing around this. I wonder if there's free content already available that I could do something creative, and here it is, and it's working for him. And I just think it's a really original play on repurposing content. So something else. It's
such a great example of, it's this thing that I teach in the audience development or audience persona building workshop that I do, where I talk about the 2 levers that you can pull, right? You can pull the sort of niche story, packaged in a unique way, or you can do the common story packaged in a common way. And it's and I got that wrong just now, but you get what I mean, sort of the opposites of that. And so it's this idea where that content that Dracula content is available to anybody. Like anybody in the world could have used that content, but he packaged it in such a unique way. That's what makes it compelling. The opposite can also be true, right? Where you can take a very niche piece of content, but not package it particularly uniquely, and you can actually create the same value there. So think about your content and how you can really start to differentiate all the things that you're doing. So I love that story.
So you have a rave as well? Let's hear it.
I do have a very quick rave. Basically, this is a news item, and we'll, of course, link to it in the show notes. And it's from Axios. But basically, this week, Dotdash Meredith, which is, of course, now, I didn't even know this, but they are the biggest publisher in the U.S. And they have now debuted their own custom-based, what they call an intent-based ad targeting tool. So they have created an entire tool that across all of their web digital media properties, which is very impressive, of course. They've got tons and tons and tons and tons of properties, from food magazines to style magazines to all the things that they publish. And basically, it doesn't use cookies, and it doesn't use any first-party data. It is all about content consumption and the way that you consume content that starts to use algorithms to then target conglomerated ads to you as you work their content. So it personalizes the content based on your consumption, not based on your personal data. And so the level of information here is small. There's not a lot of detail. They've just launched it. I will be very curious to dig into the details here, but this is doing it right. This is the way that it's supposed to be done. And it takes having a lot of content and a lot of ability to process that and connect all those experiences together, all their media properties together to do this well. But assuming this works, this is the future, I think, of when we think about the valued advertising and targeted advertising that can really, really work. So I just wanted to bring it up because I just think, they're very smart people over there at Dotdash Meredith. They really get it. And so I was very encouraged when I saw this, because here's a publisher making it work where this consortium of, the IAB plus Google plus the ANA plus all these other that are working on sort of this deprecation of the third-party cookie, they haven't been able to make it work. But these folks clearly, or at least at this point, have. And I just think it's a fascinating development.
It sounds great on paper, right? I'm reading this article.
Yes, exactly.
It does. I'm just curious to see if it's going to work. It sounds like it will. They're very
That's
smart.
Exactly right.
I'm sure they'll make it
I have
work.
lots of questions. Lots of questions. Like, what's the unique identifier? How do you do multiple sessions? All the questions I'd have, which I will dig into. But for now, this looks like a fascinating development, and I'm glad for them, because it's really needed in the industry, and it doesn't surprise me necessarily that they're the ones leading in this space.
Awesome, good stuff.
All right. Yeah, what do you got? What do you got this week? You're resting from your 100 holes of golf?
Yeah, a little bit. So a couple things. We've got all the videos from Creator Economy Expo now available. So anyone who did not get a chance to go, and what's wrong with you? You didn't come, but you didn't make it. Maybe you live in some other part of the world. Go to cex.events. You can get those videos, some amazing ones. You can see me. You can see Robert. You can see Jesse Cole, Ann Hanley, all kinds of people. And I am leaving tomorrow for VCon, Gary Vaynerchuk's conference, and I will come back with some
I'm going to be very curious then.
Yeah, and then
I can't wait.
Many of our friends are going,
fun.
So we'll see how it goes. I'm really curious. They got the 10,000 people are expected. The super conference.
Are you going to hustle there, Joe? Are you going to hustle?
I'm going to do I'm going to do all the hustle.
VCon?
I'm going to absolutely hustle.
Yeah,
I'm going to grind. I'm going to hustle.
You're going to grind. You're going to hustle.
I'm going to do all the things.
It's going to be great.
What do you got going on?
You're going to be all... I got work to do. I got big time work to do. Just starting a new class that I'm starting to get as a private class that has been requisitioned of me, which is lovely, and it's lovely new business, but it's going to be a marketing class. So I'm starting to outline that, and then working with our clients on a couple of deliverables. So super excited about that. And then other than that, enjoying the wonderful Southern California weather. It's summertime has broken here, so getting out and doing some hiking.
Awesome. Yes, we're springtime here. It's been 70 and sunny for the last couple weeks. Ever since Creator Economy Expo left, it's been beautiful weather. Go figure. So
Perfect.
What are you going to do?
Perfect. All right, folks, that is it for us. We will see you next week. And remember, of course, in the meantime, before we do see you next week, it is your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you we'll see you next week on This Old Marketing. Talk to you soon. Bye.